Hello and welcome to the show. Well, this week Kevin Brogan will tell us that clearance rates are holding steady. Over 1,000 auctions coming up this week in Sydney, tops the country, but not such good news out of Brisbane. We'll come back with all the details in just a moment.
Point your clients in the right direction with our range of directional signage. With a variety of options, we have a pointer board for every situation. Made with quality, durable materials, they're built to withstand our varying weather.
And joining us once again, Kevin Brogan from CoreLogic. Good morning, Kevin, or good afternoon, whatever the case may be.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, good stuff, mate. Okay, we've got over 1,000 auctions happening this week. We'll get to those numbers in just a moment. But before we do, let's pull up the final figures for this week. Still a good result out of Sydney, 72.8%.
Yeah, look, as we say every week, we do see a revision when we get those final results down. But I mean, at that level, that is a very strong result for Sydney, and obviously sitting ahead there of Melbourne.
Okay, Melbourne at 67.5%. The weighted average overall 65.4%. Your feeling on that? How does that compare with previous results, Kevin?
Yeah, look, so the combined average is holding steady across the capital cities. We've obviously seen some ups and downs over the last few weeks. Melbourne's been in that sort of high 60 range for a few weeks now, so 67 is only a fraction down on what we've seen. But across the other capital city markets, the smaller volume markets, we've seen more volatile results. But Canberra's probably leading the pack of the smaller markets there at a shade under 60%.
Brisbane still struggles a little bit, and we're going to see with the numbers coming up this week too, that struggle may just continue, Kevin.
Oh, look, I think, we need to look at the Brisbane market in the context of what's happening in Brisbane. I mean, it's a market that runs its own race. It doesn't sort of compete directly or on the same level with Sydney and Melbourne. Almost 40% is actually one of the higher clearance rates that we've had for Brisbane in this year. So sort of in that context, that's not a bad result at all.
Perth at 25%. Canberra's still holding up well at 57.7% as well, Kevin.
Yeah, look, Canberra's market just in the last few weeks, probably a couple of months, has actually shown a significant improvement in terms of the clearance rates. It was sitting quite a long way below Sydney for a while. Look, it's tailed off a little bit over the last week or two, but given the volume of auctions there, I don't think that's a significant trend just at the moment.
Okay, Sydney sub-regions, we can see some good performers there. Northern Beaches at well over 80%, also inner southwest at 82.9%, Kevin. Some good performers there.
Absolutely. Now, both of those regions are, or sub-regions are ones that we do see performing really quite well. Both of them have been relatively resilient during the downturn and are now coming into their own. There's a couple of sub-regions there worthy of note because they don't typically find themselves at the top of the league table, so to speak, and very low volumes. But I mean, 9 out of 10 sales were successful in Sutherland at auction last week, so 90%. Now, Sutherland does have a bit of volatility, but nonetheless, I think that probably speaks to the returning confidence for buyers.
What's driving that? Is it affordability?
Oh, probably not in Sydney. Look, I think the median prices that were achieved at auction are well above the median house prices for private treaty sales, and that would be true in Sutherland. Look, I think it is the confidence that's returned. The regulatory framework for lending for investors, but also for owner occupier purchases with those reductions in interest rates and the APRA serviceability buffer. So I think it's that demand returning to the market.
Very good. Okay, Melbourne sub-regions. What are we looking at here, mate? There's some pretty good results. They're fairly uniform.
Yeah, look, I mean, that has been a feature for a while. We've picked a couple of standouts in Melbourne over the last couple of weeks. This week, the Northeast has come in at the highest at 76%. That's from 42 auctions, which for Melbourne is relatively quiet. But I mean, it's enough results to show that there's significance in that result. And the Southeast, the other sub-region, above 70% at 72.7%. Again, 55 results for that location is not a high number, but it's enough to demonstrate that that's a significant improvement in confidence.
Okay, well, we're going to come back with our auction numbers for this week, and we'll get Kevin Brogan's view on where the market's headed. That's coming up in just a moment. Before we do, with his auction tip for this week, here's James Bell.
Hi, I'm James Bell from the Auction Group, where marketing will advertise your auction property to buyers actively looking at listings in the area. A successful sale on auction day is also about drawing buyers into the market and helping them prepare to bid. The auction campaign involves a lot of work by agents prior to the auction day. It is proactive and purposeful work from the outset geared towards assisting buyers to become bidders. In the auction process, the buyers, sellers, agent and auctioneer each have roles and responsibilities. For buyers, it is their role to transform themselves into bidders and to understand what will be required of them on auction day. Agents can and should, of course, help buyers put themselves in the best possible position. As we draw closer to the auction day, you could send information and case studies to buyers about what happens on an auction day and how they can get ready to bid. It is important that buyers are accountable for their part in the process, so agents are always qualifying them about finance and their preparedness prior to the auction. I'm James Bell from propertytv.io.
Thanks, James. Okay, Kevin Brogan from CoreLogic. Let's get back to business. Auctions for this week. Let's bring those figures up. Walk us through this one, mate.
So we've seen in both Sydney and Melbourne an increase in the number of auctions. I'd have to say it's a modest increase, but 366 in Sydney against 303, and 480 in Melbourne. That is a bit of an increase, and obviously we're marching towards spring when we expect to see a significant increase in the number of auctions.
Brisbane and Adelaide, a bit of a tie there, 62 each.
Absolutely, a dead heat. So the story behind that is for Brisbane, that's slightly fewer auctions than last week, and for Adelaide, it's a handful more auctions, but a bit of friendly competition to see how we go this week, I think.
Yeah, I know you mentioned earlier in the show that Brisbane runs its own race. I think we're going to watch that market fairly carefully, because I would have thought that things would be picking up a little bit better than what they are in the Brisbane market. Kevin, I'd love to get your take on that.
Yeah, look, I think the auction market, when I say it runs its own race, I think that's in relation to auctions, because if we take Adelaide as being a fairly similar sized auction market, there's a bit of ebb and flow, but there is a bit of comparability. But I think in Adelaide, the agent behaviour is very clearly to carefully pick a restricted number of properties to go to auction on the basis of their sort of unusual characteristics or positive attributes in order to test the market. And I think the listings are much more likely to be for properties that are going to be successful. And I certainly think in Adelaide the properties aren't listed where perhaps because auctions aren't that common, going to auction might be an impediment to participation by prospective purchasers. So look, I just think the way that properties are listed is slightly different between the two capital cities. So I don't think that the clearance rate in Brisbane being lower than in Adelaide actually reflects on the overall market for particularly houses.
Fair comment. Okay, so what do you think we're going to be saying this time on Monday about the preliminary clearance rates? We had this week a weighted average of 65.4%. Just refresh my memory, how much was that down on the prelims from last week?
Oh, look, down from the preliminary rate, I think it came down about 5% overall. But look, I mean, for the coming week, I think what we've seen for the last few weeks is that there has been a sustained return of confidence for buyers in the market. So I would expect that this week we're probably going to see similar numbers in terms of clearance rates. What we're all looking forward to, I think, is the spring season when we get sellers coming back to the market, and whether we see these clearance rates sustain themselves in conditions of greater auction supply.
Well, we really only have a couple of months to wait, not even that, maybe 6 weeks to wait to see until we get into the spring market. So you're right. There'd be a lot of people now preparing their properties, I guess, for the start of spring.
Oh, look, and certainly if they are, they'd be looking at these results that we report on and seeing some encouragement from them. So it'd be interesting to see when auction spring starts in relation to calendar spring. When we see markets performing well, we do see people sort of starting to list ahead of the 1st of September. So it'd be interesting to see how this market responds. Yeah,
we should watch the listing numbers as well. That'll give us a bit of an indication, because these results always come about 4 weeks after listing anyway. So.
Oh, absolutely. And listing numbers at the moment for private treaty are well down in Sydney and Melbourne, which begs the question: are vendors waiting for that? That spring selling season, and how much sort of latent supply is there that's going to hit the market.
Very good. Kevin Brogan from CoreLogic. Thank you very much for your time, Kevin. Look forward to talking to you on Monday when we'll give you the preliminary results from this weekend. Good on you, mate. Have a good weekend.
Thanks,
talk to you on Monday.
And you. Speak soon.